It looks like we're live. Are we
Yes.
live? Okay.
We are. Hi, everybody. Thank you for your patience. We just had some technical difficulties, but we are here waiting for our debrief. We'll wait a few minutes for others to join. How are you today, Inna?
I'm great. How are you doing? It's nice to be here all cozy and in person and not on Zoom.
It is. I'm feeling a little tired. Honestly, after 2 weeks, hands up for everybody who was here. Hi, Nadia and Sanyu.
Hi, folks.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see our last day in New York.
Well, your last day. I can't wait. I can't wait to get home. Okay. I know people have places to go. Shall we jump right in?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, let's start by introducing ourselves. Hi, everybody. Faye, Macheke and Inna Michaeli here joining you live. Oh my God, our first live ever from New York City, where we just spent 2 weeks at the United Nations CSW, and we will tell you all about it and what it actually is. And yeah, and we are both here with AWID, a global feminist organization and just an incredible global feminist community. So yeah, CSW.
Yes. Lots of hugs. That's the first thing when we met everybody. But we have just completed almost two full weeks now at the UNCSW, which ended on Friday. And we thought, well, you know, not everybody can get to CSW and not everybody knows what it is. But it's also been a historically important international space for women's rights. And we wanted to report back to you, our members, our friends, our partners, who might be interested in what's going on here. So, debrief. I think we've been debriefing already in the hallways and corridors and everywhere we met different feminists. I have to say, it was really happening outside. What do you think?
Yeah, a lot of, absolutely, and we'll get to it. But I think it's also important that, you know, we say in no shape or form are we trying to say that CSW is the space to be. And if you were not here, that you missed anything, because we all choose different spaces for our feminist activism, you know, grassroots or national or regional spaces. So, you know, we really just wanted to report back, to connect it to conversations that are happening in other spaces. And honestly, even for those who attend the CSW every year, it's always an open question on whether, you know, whether we still want to attend, how strategic the participation is. So not promoting CSW, just really sharing, you know, our own takeaways and impressions.
And this is our opinion, right? Just in case anybody thinks we're reporting on anyone's behalf, we're just wanting to have this conversation with all of you, so welcome into our space. These are our own impressions, and the CSW has just ended, but just so you know, most formal and even informal debriefs haven't happened yet, and we are experimenting with starting this conversation. But for our staff who are at CSW and behind the scenes, you rock. We really appreciate you. I cannot tell you the number of people that came back to us and told us how awesome our portals are. For those who don't know what the portals are, we will get to it. But do look, do hold on for that. And also for our members, a big thank you for those who came up to say hello to us and those that we didn't see, but we know that they're here. So what do we want to talk about today?
Yeah, well, and we should say this conversation is in English, but in the next couple of days we'll also upload translation to our other working languages at AWID, which are French and Spanish. So, yeah, what are we our agenda for today, right? We want to say, first of all, we want to say what the CSW is. we want to reflect on a few key issues that are a priority for us. Accessibility of CSW and policy spaces like this in many forms in which we understand accessibility. Also, our experiment with technology and kind of portals and connecting New York to Global South spaces and kind of in creative ways and new technologies. We will also reflect on the formal process and kind of our some of our thoughts on that. And we will also, maybe finish with a bit of optimism and thoughts for the future, right?
Okay. It's been 67 years, Inna, of this. I mean, maybe we must just let people know what is CSW. Do you want to break it down?
Yeah, it's CSW number 67. So you can see it's been around for a while. It's the United Nations Commission on the Status of Women, which is happening every year around March for 2 weeks. And so this is a place where basically United Nations member states come together to discuss, progress and problems on different aspects of gender equality, and each year there is a different priority theme. But there is also a review theme, which is basically going back to the priority theme of something like 5 years ago, and having a bit of a continuity. It's not all member states, so basically you have on the Commission of Status of Women, each time you have 45 member states, which are from different regions that are represented, and I think they stay around for about 4 years, but basically you can just go to the UN CSW website and see, for example, is your state on, or the nation state where you happen to live, or your state, is it on the committee, on the commission, and to get a sense of what your state is basically doing there.
You call them states, but some might call them countries.
Yeah, exactly. And some of us might be very connected to the places where we live, and some of us happen to migrate and have, we can all have complex relationship with home. But that's a whole different IG Live. But I think another thing that is important to know about the CSW is that the states are negotiating a document that is called AWID Conclusions, which focuses on the priority theme. So that's basically the main outcome document from this session, and it's not legally binding for each and every state, but I do believe that historically those agreements made on international level have been useful for feminists working on a national level to pressure their own governments to kind of, say, well, you were saying, on this international agreement how much you support, I don't know, sexual and reproductive health and rights. Let's make sure that the national legislation actually matches that. So at least historically, that has been one of the important uses of this outcome for feminist movements. Mm-hmm. And, maybe we should also say who is actually here. So who is actually here, right?
Yeah, and that's that's a bit difficult for me to say who is here, but I think that a different answer would be on who was in the formal process and in the UN headquarters, and who is in the civil society side events. And I think I'm feeling a bit bad for people who never attended civil society events, because I mean that's where the real expertise was, the thought leadership, and really the joy and fun. There were such rich discussions and solutions and kick-ass conversations, all about really creating a just world. And I wish that people in UN headquarters who were at those events had joined us. But
first time I was here, I was really surprised that you have this invisible wall. So you have the UN headquarters where you need a badge to get in. We'll get to it. You need to get in.
I don't have my badge.
In my bag. I swear. So you need. And that's sort of where the formal UN process happens. But then outside, in all kinds of, basements of all kinds of NGOs and spaces like this. You have the side events by the civil society and by just like where you feel a lot of amazing feminists from all over the world bringing a lot of expertise and, and mind and heart on many critical issues. So, yeah.
And maybe, let's not forget that there's always a bunch of anti-rights organizations coming with their own agenda to fight access to safe abortion, to CSEs, LGBTQI rights, etc. On that note, you might all want to check out our Rights at Risk, an entire resource library examining who they are and how they operate. I'm sure you'll have fun with that report.
And also a bunch of other resources like what is gender ideology and things like that. And I should say we have been hearing also on civil society events that we really need to understand who are those anti-rights groups that come and try to basically come to a commission on the status of women and trying to advance agenda that is actually against, that is just the destruction of women's rights, of sexual and reproductive health and rights. So we heard quite a lot of calls, we need to really understand who they are and how they operate. So just to say we're on it, we do have a whole resource library on AWID's website, so please check those resources because it is really it's really there as tools, for movements, for grassroots groups who are, whether you are countering those, anti-rights, far-right, patriarchal, kind of fundamentalist groups in the UN or in your sort of specific national context, because they are interconnected.
Yeah. And our AWID website address is awid.org, but you can also see the link in our bio. Please check it out. But let's go to accessibility.
Yeah, we
talked a little bit about who was there, feminists, states, everybody that needed to have a say. But how easy was it? I mean, to get there. We had this conversation.
Is it a
before.
yes/no question? Because
I think it's a complicated.
Let's unpack it a little bit. I mean, first let's start with even just getting to New York City. It's extremely expensive not only to get here, but like to have a coffee. Like everything is extremely expensive here, accommodations, the flight, getting the visa.
Okay, that don't remind me of that nightmare. It's actually a trauma.
Okay, but maybe we should say also not getting the visa, because a lot of feminist activists every year just don't get the visa to come here. And from the UN perspective, it is, it's the responsibility of the hosting country. But come on, it's the 67 CSW. Can we not make sure that, women, transgender, diverse folks, whoever, is engaged in advancing gender equality, women's rights, LGBTQI rights, that we can actually just get here and be part of the conversation? I mean, surely, it's more than 67 years to solve those issues. So that's, and I find like there is no excuse.
No, we met people that came yesterday after CSW.
Yeah, because they just got their visa.
They just got their visa.
And all the people we haven't met because they didn't get their visa ever. And so the visa, the money. In order to be part of the formal process, just to be able to get into the UN headquarters, you need an accreditation that organizations with ECOSOC status have, which we have, but we are very limited in the number of people that we can, actually, who can even use that.
Well, let's explain what is ECO.
Yeah, so it's basically, ECOSOC is the status you get through the UN Economic and Social Council, and it's a whole process to apply and to have your organization accredited. Hi, Yasmin. Hi, Maria. Nice to see all the folks joining us.
And I just want to touch on what Zofem says. Southern feminist activists especially get to be excluded, and this is true. We know of many that could not make it, which is part of why we are wanting to talk about this. This is a conversation, it's all of us. What did you say in your
Yeah, so basically, okay, so the visa, the money, I have heard organizations saying, for me to be here for a week, it's the annual budget of my organization.
Yeah.
So like the resources issue should be very clear. But let's say,
yeah. Let's say you get here.
Okay, let's say you got here.
And you're excited because now you want your UN badge, which gives you access into UN headquarters and other planned side events.
You might have a whole other challenge coming your way though.
Yes.
So you go into this place where you're supposed to get your UN pass.
Well done for putting it in a different space
Yeah.
instead of the UN headquarters itself.
Yeah.
So that I really liked before I went in.
So you find your space, you go
Yes.
in there, and sometimes you have to wait, 2 or 3 hours or more in order to get the badge after you possibly have traveled 20 or 30 hours. And it's early March in New York, so you are cold, hungry, and exhausted. And then you wait there for several hours outside the building or inside the building. And then we get inside and we see that, there are no accommodations for people with disabilities.
Or people who are just tired.
People who are just tired, you don't have a place to sit. I asked explicitly, are there any accommodations for people with disabilities? I was told there are none. I don't know if that's true, but this is what I was told.
I was just tired, so I just sat on the floor and I said, can you give me a chair? No, you can't sit here, you can't sit there. So you know what, after 25 hours of travel, I just sat on the floor and I asked folks to tell me when it was my turn.
And honestly, a lot of us experienced rudeness of the staff working there. And you are the first people to welcome those of us who have traveled a very long way, and some of us may be coming for the first time, and it's our first encounter with the UN, and that's what you get. So lack of accommodations, also near lack of COVID protocols in general for and of course if there is no accessibility accommodations that actually make it possible for you to be part of the conversation, then your actual issues are also not going to be addressed.
Yeah.
So it's like this circle of exclusion, right?
Yeah, and it's your actual influence inside the formal process is also quite limited, and the space we actually have is actually heard by states.
Yeah.
So there's a bit of a is this for civil society? Where are the where's the link here and where's the conversation?
And we were checking just yesterday how many people actually registered for the CSW, and it was a very impressive number, like 7,000. But I'm actually curious how many of these 7,000 actually got the UN badge, because I heard people saying, I didn't even bother to get it, or I got it and I didn't even bother to go inside the UN headquarters. So that says something about the trust in the process.
And Jessica is just reminding us that if you don't speak English, it's also very difficult, because I don't know about you, I didn't see any translation, at least outside. I think inside the spaces there was, but this state of affairs is leading a lot of global South feminists, including myself, to demand that CSW moves away from New York to the global South. And I know it might seem unrealistic, but then so was a vote. So was women working a long time ago.
We're not in this business for what's realistic, right?
Exactly.
But also I'm seeing, what folks are saying in the comments, that this exclusion of Southern feminists is a deliberate act. So we're not being naive here. We don't think any of this is an accident or somebody, just didn't think of it. And even if they haven't, we have been saying those things for years. And but maybe, it's important just to have an overall comment that the UN in general is not, it's not very... it's not very welcoming for civil society, for grassroots, for us to be the way we are. There's a very strong unspoken pressure for this kind of respectability politics, and a lot of bureaucracy that many of us are not very good at navigating, and thank goodness for that.
Yeah, and I'm seeing a lot of resonance in the chat as well, Marie-Claire and Zoe. Thank you for commenting. So, what we actually try to do this year as AWID is precisely that. Try to break down barriers, some of those barriers, and find creative and innovative ways to connect those of us in New York with feminists in different regions of the world, and in ways that are participatory, and enable real connection and ownership.
Maybe to explain a little bit what we did, and you should definitely, first of all, just go to AWID Facebook and YouTube, not now, when we are done with this conversation, please.
The link is in our bio.
Yeah, the link is in our bio. So we basically positioned a kind of physical portals in New York and Bangalore, India, and in Nairobi, Kenya, which are sort of these physical spaces where you can come in and you can have, a full body video contact with folks in the other portals. So it was a way to, I think, first of all, to like decenter New York as the center of this, and to have equal conversations between, those are just the locations that we were able to experiment with. It's the first time we did that.
But real conversations, right? Because
absolutely.
We had people from a different geographical area actually speaking to issues that were happening in the UN, and some people actually just issues that we were talking about, and some people actually just passed by to say hello. They enjoyed the.
Yeah, and we're speaking in our language, in our terms, on stuff that we know everything about. So, really kind of liberated from those constraints of more formal spaces and being able to get real, And indeed, one of the conversation, a whole event was about accessibility.
Yeah, and that's a valid CSW.
And it was named the obstacle course. So, for a reason. At least we keep our sense of humor and irony, as we navigate.
I think we were in an obstacle course here. But let's talk about the theme for this year. And the priority theme was innovation and technological change and education in the digital age for achieving gender equality and the empowerment of all women and girls.
Which is basically to say it's about technology, digital innovation, and education for gender equality.
Yeah, there was also a review theme, challenges and opportunities in achieving gender equality and the empowerment of rural women and girls, agreed conclusions of the 62nd session.
Right. So actually we were here 5 years ago when it was the theme of rural women. I cannot say that we have seen amazing progress since then in the lives or the rights of rural women. So,
what does it mean to have a theme every year, and how do we link it to the basic issues of rights? Because it feels like this year we're coming in with technology, and then next year the team. Do you feel like they relate?
And even if you have this review, it's like, where is the accountability? So we look at 5 years later, and we see and this is, I think, where CSW connects to other UN processes that have also a different standing in terms of their legally binding aspects, like the CEDAW processes or the HLBF. So I mean, it's just, I think, for those folks who are a bit deeper in this type of advocacy, but we know that it is a concern of making stronger linkages there to make sure that there's more accountability. So just flagging that.
Yeah, and I think it's the continuity is also a little bit difficult, right? Because who remembers what happened 5 years ago? I mean, I can only remember the pandemic, and
it did weird things to our memory. But let's go a little bit into the theme of digital rights, because I think it was really an opportunity. Because we do see, because we kind of the whole lemonade out of lemons, and basically with every theme ever at CSW, I have always seen feminists bringing very sharp analysis. So
we can't not mention Ambika.
Yes, so
Ambika's
hi
excellent
Ambika,
piece. Hi Ambika.
Hi, amazing building feminist economist team. Because you have this, mainstream narrative about how technology is the answer to gender equality, but not really seeing that kind of the tech industry or the whole, digital space as also a space of power relations, as a specific industry where some people have ownership, and the people who have ownership over the big tech just, happen to be 5 white older men in the north. So it was a really important opportunity for some really more thorough critique and a feminist analysis of the digital space as a space of power where we want to make an intervention. So please check out, also in our bio, why feminists reject big tech.
I have to say that in the spaces I was in, nobody spoke about big tech. It was like, no algorithms, let's just go into technology and talk about it. It was strange, don't you think? That
I mean, strange and not strange, because, we have seen that it's something like 7 events by the World Bank within the UN headquarters, kind of within the formal program. So really you have quite a lot of very neoliberal kind of approach, and not really taking apart, questions of ownership, of power, of the economy that is behind all this. So, for example, we were speaking quite a lot about the issue of online gender-based violence and, surveillance and persecution of activists. Like those things did come up. But what
of
came,
corporate capture,
right, exactly.
Thank you, Sanyu.
Of those, exactly. So, the online violence came quite a lot, but the fact that, it's not just a few, horrible people. You have algorithms that actually thrive on hate speech. You have industry that profits of specific kinds of hate speech.
At all costs.
Manipulate. There were things, mentioned, like manipulation of elections. Like what it means, for people's efforts to build more democratic states and societies. So, really kind of going into the belly of the beast. And this I have seen much more in the side events, because there were so many amazing, like, feminists who do tech and, the digital, sort of the feminist principles of the internet and all this amazing body of work.
And there's quite a bit on economic empowerment and entrepreneurship in the context of innovation, and really it should be more critical, there was no recognition of the digital industries that have been transforming and restructuring the labor market.
Yeah, or how, or it's like creation of jobs, but if it's very precarious jobs, if it's all outsourced, if you have, no social protection and social rights and things like that. So, it's, just economic empowerment and entrepreneurship is this kind of depoliticized, like, good things.
But they're also still buzzwords, right?
Yeah, and it's amazing that it's buzzwords because we have like 30, 40 years of, of feminists, of grassroots groups, of practitioners taking apart those things and showing how they can actually be very problematic, and they can actually go against women's economic rights. They can present individualized success stories instead of structural solutions, but we still see those buzzwords. And it's not because we have not brought enough analysis that really shows it's not that simple. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's not. I think I want to also shout out and give a big thank you and acknowledge the hard work of our sisters who were in negotiations. I know on Thursday last week, I think people were in negotiations until 4 a.m. in the morning. Mm-hmm. And, they were physically and emotionally drained because the political atmosphere in many states continues to go backwards.
Yeah, and
social justice.
I'm seeing folks in comments speaking about censorship of content about abortion, on sexual rights, and for us it's also something that came up because we are actually in a situation where we have to still defend within that formal process, and within so many national contexts, maybe every national context, our most basic rights. Right? So it feels sometimes a little bit detached to go into this, we have this innovative, amazing technology when we don't have actually basic consensus about, having power over our bodies, our lives, livelihoods, decent work. So, but I think
I think there were moments of optimism because
okay. I will not. I don't disagree.
Yes, we had feminists and people within institutions. I think we have to acknowledge that they push for justice as best they can, and we are there to support them. It's not easy, and there's not enough of them. But I think what was also clear was that we're not going to give up. Maybe let's zoom out.
Yeah,
and
but
just talk about.
We can zoom out in a second, but I also just want to appreciate, the amazing way of feminists who come here to whichever the priority theme is. we always find a way to bring those very real issues through that theme.
Yeah. Maybe an example is the care work, right? We were talking, there was a lot of talk about care work and how care workers can use technology to better their lives. And I mean, it's very simple. I think I heard from people from our group certainly saying that why not just reward them? You know, like it's a simple answer. It's not about technology. Gopika is saying the internet is not a neutral space. It is a battleground for our basic rights and not some depoliticized tool for women's empowerment. Thank you, Gopika. Very true. But what were your favorite moments in CSW?
Okay.
Wasn't on doom and gloom.
No, absolutely not. I mean, first of all those amazing events that were really about feminist analysis of the internet and the ways, you know, we deal with the bad stuff, but also use it for our struggles as a tool. So, and also manage to create ways of using technology and the internet in ways, you know, in ways that understand exactly what, you know, what Gopika is writing, that yes, it is a terrain for struggle on our basic rights, and we have our strategies for that struggle. So, yeah, my favorite moments. Okay, well, first of all, every time AWID members came to, you know, like this person you don't know comes to you and like, hey, I'm an AWID member. And, you know, they said hello. And, you know, we were just constantly reminded that, you know, we are relatively new in our positions, but we have such a whole, you know, long history to hold and responsibility of bringing people power to spaces like this, of, you know, working together to ensure civil society has a voice, that we hold institutions of power accountable, but also that we support and hold each other in spaces like this that are not friendly to many of us and even less friendly to some of us, right?
And talking about power, I actually loved how the UNDP, academia, and feminist women rights organizations with different viewpoints on care work all came together on stage. I think it became about who's sitting at the table, that conversation, and we had conversation about burning the table or taking the table to the south. It was really engaged, but I think the point is that there is a meeting where power and civil society can actually have real conversations, and I think that session managed to happen with UNDP. And also I think there were other moments that were just, for me, a place where we could celebrate together in solidarity, like Arrow. Arrow turned 30.
Happy birthday, Arrow.
Happy birthday, Arrow. And then we had some really interesting conversations and innovations, like the ISTAO event, which brought additional lens to LGBTQI rights. But I love the interpretation. I mean, you just you could. They had so many languages, and all you needed was your headphones to connect to a different space. So
back to the English comment, you can actually use technology to expand accessibility, to make sure that you're translating to other languages, even if the interpreters are in another country. There are ways to do it if you really want to do it.
Yeah. So, in terms of the overall experience of CSW, I think we heard different perspectives. One of which is that for some, they felt that their issues were not heard and there were not sufficient avenues for their issues to be heard. We are really just two people with our own experience, speaking from our own positioning. So please feel free to share your experience in the comments, positive and negative, as much as you're comfortable. We also heard from young feminists. You know, half of our membership in AWID is young feminists under 30. And so we just want to share from our personal reflection of what we are seeing. On the one hand, institutional efforts in different years, in different parts of the UN, to include youth. I mean, UN Women speaks about this being the first time they created a space for youth to participate in dialogue with decision makers. But on the other hand, what we hear from many young people is a feeling of tokenism, limited space, to really bring their agendas and shift the power. I mean, it is maybe it's the first year, and we'll need to see what...
You're very kind and generous.
What happens in the next year? Well, we need to organize and strategize, together.
Absolutely. And
but what do you want for the next CSW?
You know, Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. You know, I think one of my favorite moments in this CSW, which I really wish for us, so there was this wonderful Femnet event about African indigenous technologies.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, instead of going into all these gadgets and things like that, it was asking, you know, what is a technology? And what is a technology that is by and for the people?
Mm-hmm.
And that really serves, you know, the well-being of people and the environment. So for me, I wish that, you know, this would be the starting point of every conversation on each topic at the CSW. And, you know, not just this neoliberal kind of silver bullets for this, you know, neoliberal economic empowerment, or, you know, that we really start from this space. But if I'm thinking, you know, next CSW, right? Like, and what are the things that we want for that? I think.
But hold on.
Okay.
I want us to summarize the challenges.
Let's summarize.
So that we're all on the same page. We've got lots of people joining us. So let's summarize the main challenges. I think one was accessibility. The other one was civil society participation and influence in the formal process. And the last and most important one was resources. You know, the more and better resources to advocate for, not just for CSW, but core resources for feminists to do the work that they love and that they know how to do. And we know feminists are leading the way.
And you know, like on civil society participation, like the challenges come from so many different directions. I mean, yes, you have the unfriendliness, you know, of formal spaces such as this, but you also have state violence in ways in which, you know, states, but also I'm seeing that you're writing about, you know, big tech censoring, promoting safe information about abortion and free and safe abortion app. So thank you for bringing this up. And really, those are the issues that should be at the heart of the conversation.
Next CSW, what is the priority theme? We're about to round off. I see our time. I'm enjoying this.
Yeah,
I think we must do this. Okay, next CSW.
Right, so actually let's just take the same challenges and make them into aims, right? So one thing is about accessibility. Like the practices are there, the solutions are there, there are ways of ensuring, you know, expanding accessibility in so many ways. You know, our contribution was with the portals, so again, you know, shout out to our amazing team, communications and advancing universal rights and justice, and all the folks who worked really hard, and also all the amazing partners, you know, who said, okay, we're just going to do this really weird experiment with you. And, you know, folks have been approaching us and saying, your team was working so hard and they were so busy, so like we just wanted to make sure that they actually understood how much fun we had in with those portals. So.
And if you want to know more and want to join the AWID membership, again, please, the link is in our bio. We would really love to welcome you as an AWID member. Our members are getting, the membership's getting bigger and bigger, but also the conversations are getting more exciting. So please join us.
And deeper, and relationships.
Deeper.
Absolutely. So, you know, if we think really, you know, about all those challenges and we turn them into our aims, because that's how we roll. So accessibility, we said. The civil society participation and influence in the formal process, and that's something that is for us, but also for, you know, we have, you know, great colleagues in the NGO CSW and, you know, allies within UN institutions and UN Women to really be thinking, you know, how not to lose people, like how not to create a situation in which people travel here all the way and don't even bother to get a badge because they don't feel there's a point, you know, that they will really be heard. So it's very clear that, you know, there's a need to really rethink that, and the calls of bringing the CSW to the global south is, you know, one of the very powerful answers.
And I think, I mean, there are two words that we've been using this whole time. I think that what's what I saw and what's really clear from CSW is people have the power. We have lots of people power as feminists, and I think even if we had limited spaces, we were literally kicking ass in the conversations that we had.
And we also supported each other, you know, throughout this 2 weeks. Thank you, Faye.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, okay, we've come to the end of this conversation. We want to thank all 34 of you. Some have dropped off, but we want to thank all of you. for joining us this morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are. Big thanks for keeping us company in this conversation. Tell us if you want to hear from us again. We quite enjoyed this.
Or not. Tell us if you don't.
Or not. Oh my God, we look forward to actually listening to all of you. Whether we meet you in in-person events or you meet some of us from AWID in our membership spaces, so we will see you again. Thank you so much.
Ciao.
Bye.